the pain of circumcision. I'm just going to read some of this, but when you think about the senses, for a baby, the first active sense is touch, because the nervous system is being developed, right? It's like one of the first things that has to be developed with the brain. And we are very keen to sensing, touch, feeling, registering, ultrasound, right? Like registering the environment of which we're in, because, we can obviously sense what's happening to our mother and everything that's outside of it, but we're so active because we have to be so in tune with our body. If we're hungry, if something's wrong, right? We have to have that alarming clock that's going to tell us, hey, I'm getting to a certain point. I'm all about survival. So when we think about the touch, and so the ability to feel pain, it's actually way more significant than adults, because that's what they have to be. They're like this sentient being. There is a 50% increase in cortisol production during the act itself. So the heart rate, it's almost like, actually babies actually have cardiac arrest and have heart attacks and die. I think it's every other day a baby dies of circumcision. The pain is so painful that the soul of the baby leaves the body, creating disassociation, reinforcing trauma. This is so painful. I've got two options, right? Like two options that I have, because my motor skills aren't fully developed. So I've got two options: cry or pass the fuck out. And so kind of, some people are like, my baby was really quiet and, they just went to sleep after. Your baby is in absolute nervous shock and has completely passed out because it can't handle the pain. I mean, there's no other way to go about it. You've got to scream. And some of these screams are so intense that babies' lungs burst and they die. There were some nurses that were stating that the scream of a circumcision is way different than any other baby crying that you will ever hear. Right? I think I wrote down here, it's like, oh, shh, baby is sleeping. Think about it. Can you imagine yourself sleeping while someone carves up your genitals? I can't. Can you imagine passing out from the pain and the terror? Yeah, absolutely. So that is the sleep of babies being circumcised. It's the baby's attempt to escape. They're limited. Yep. PTSD, pain tolerance is actually something, well, the lack thereof, right? So the amount, let's say the baby gets circumcised and then a couple days later, you're doing your routine vaccine, whatever. And babies that have had that previous PTSD and trauma are going to be a lot more reactive, because the needles of the injections themselves are going to bring about that experience. So their pain threshold is actually just completely dropped and they're freaking out. There is medical studies that show significant increase in heart rate. I already said that. Some infants do not cry because they go into shock. I said that. There's a lot of babies that have an increased risk of choking and difficulty breathing. Yeah, general anesthesia is not considered, it's not considered safe, so they don't do it. So just imagine for a minute that happening to you now without anything. Okay. The pain of circumcision continued. So circumcision permanently alters the brain by the adverse change to the brain structure and function in the prefrontal cortex that impact adversely a child's subsequent personality development. What I'm about to read, I think, is this where it is? I don't know. Psychological harms include short and long-term trauma, PTSD, emotional disturbances, life-like sadness, frustration, anger, lack of parental and overall trust, fear of intimacy, and constant fears of safety. So, on circumcision and sexuality, Freud actually said that circumcision was a substitute for castration, suggesting a possible connection between castration fears, neuroses, and circumcision. So they have a life impairing level of castration anxiety, and it is a low level neurological castration. So if you think about that castration, then you can also again think about the disassociation, right? The trauma, everything that kind of like follows suit. Indeed, for centuries, circumcision has been used as a strategy to reduce sexual gratification. So if you were, so I was listening to Brandon Marotta, that's how you say his last name, and Kimanami had a podcast, Circumvent Circumcision. It's actually great. I'm actually referencing some of that stuff. It's on the back in the resources. They said if you continue to dig, like regardless of religion or medical stuff, and just go down and down, you'll just come to the baseline. Circumcision is meant to reduce pleasure. Like there is like no other, right? Like if you think old times Bible, you're masturbating too much. Oh, again, like I said, you're not focusing on your Bible studies. Like you're not focused in on God. So let's do what we can to reduce the need or the desire to express any sexual